Rudy, let me start with this federal story because I watched Mark Carney yesterday talking about a couple of big projects that are on the way. He spent some time talking, of course, about buying Canadian yesterday as well. But then I think the question I heard today was, well, who's getting what first? So some provinces already have some of these big projects. Others are waiting to find out if they're getting them. Where are we on that today?
That's the big question. Mark Carney is supposed to make an announcement this Thursday when it comes to what are the upcoming projects, because his first announcement was kind of the low-hanging fruit. For example, in Quebec, it was more money for the Contreport Harper, which was already an approved project. Some project, for example, in Ontario was mining and others and nuclear. The question right now that everybody is asking is when is he going to get into the core business, which is oil and gas? Because as you know, Alberta has been asking for oil and gas. British Columbia has said no way. New Brunswick is also asking for possibly oil and gas. So now this is the question. What kind of project is the federal government is going to fast track? Because don't forget, the whole point of those projects is to get approval quickly so they can move forward. So right now the pressure is on the Prime Minister to unveil those new list of projects, but also defense. This is something also that is on the agenda. As you know, the federal government, and it was announced in the budget, is going to increase defense spending. They want to have some new submarines. They want to have some new equipment. But every provinces, including Quebec, for example, and the Premier of Quebec, has been asking, are we going to have our part when it comes to defense spending? For example, the Davy shipyard in Quebec City, or even, for example, Bombardier or CAE in the Montreal region.
So I have a question with respect to some of these projects, right? So we know that Danielle Smith in Alberta,
Yep.
pushing, of course, for pipelines. Yet we know that out in BC, the push is, of course, against these. Mark Carney keeps referring to Danielle Smith, who used to be an adversary when Justin Trudeau was prime minister. They seem to have a pretty cordial relationship. He calls her Danielle. I mean, what do you expect may happen here? Is he going to let a pipeline go through from Alberta to the West Coast, or does BC get the right to say, no, we don't want it? What's next?
But that's the difficulty, because don't forget that we have for the moment a united front when it comes to the Canada-U.S. trade war. And at the same time, Prime Minister Carney was very clear that we have to build in Canada, that we have to have national projects, that we have to diversify our market. And when he means diversifying, it means, for example, more export of certain goods and includes oil and gas to Asia, for example. But as you rightly pointed out, British Columbia said we already have a pipeline, we already have LNG, we're not looking to have more projects. Same thing when it comes to First Nation. Don't forget that we need to have approval of First Nation for those big national projects. So it's going to be very hard, because at the same time, we are having difficulties in Ontario when it comes to autos, and we've seen how Doug Ford has been behaving lately. The same thing can happen also, don't forget, when it comes to Alberta, breaking what I can call the whole Team Canada approach and united front when it comes to the U.S., saying that Canada and the federal government is blocking Canadian resources to go out in market, for example, in Asia.
All right. So I was going to say, who's he going to appease? Is it going to be Danielle Smith or David Eby? We'll have to wait and see.
Yes.
Let me sort of focus on here in Quebec. We all know that François Legault, just the news gets worse and worse from day to day. Earlier today, a new poll out showing that he's pretty much lost the confidence of Quebecers as far as Bill 2 is concerned. I think that number is 47 or 48%. I think this is a bad idea. And the bigger number, which is 73%, I think, of Quebecers are expecting doctors to leave by virtue of this. So my question, and we talked about this earlier, is, Rudy, tell me, I mean, at what point does François Legault look and realize, the writing is on the wall, this is not going to work, or does he?
Look, there's two things. First of all, I think it's a lesson that you don't try to make a big reform, especially when you're not popular, especially when it's your last year in office. Normally in politics, you try to get those big reforms very early on in your mandate, especially when you're very popular. So right now, as you rightly pointed out, the numbers are not good. The government haven't been able to make the case to Quebecers that their reform when it comes to changing the compensation for doctors is going to improve the system. And that's the big difficulty, and you see it in the polls. People are worried right now that they're going to lose their doctors. They don't believe that for the moment when it comes to the bill number 2, when it comes to the reform for doctors, that it's going to be beneficial for the system. And that's very, very difficult. At the same time, I do believe that the health minister didn't do a good job in just explaining what exactly he's doing. And you can also see it in the polls. More than 25% of Quebecers actually don't have an opinion because those are very difficult to understand when it comes to what exactly is at stake. So I do believe that, yes, Premier Legault is losing the communication battle when it comes to the reform. Yes, the doctors are being, especially with last weekend, what happened at the Bell Center and their rally, I think they're able to make their case that it's not a good reform. But don't forget, there's also a very important data that was also released today by Leger, is that 50% of Quebecers are saying that they don't think that they should increase the salary of doctors and specialists and that their compensation is fair right now. So that's something. Look, the question right now is Premier Legault is going to keep Health Minister Dubé. As you know, he's not running again in the next election. But at the same time, Premier Legault has been very clear that he's been willing to do this reform for the last 25 years, that even when he was health minister back in the days, he wanted to do this reform. So is he going to have the courage? Or, again, he's going to maybe drop his minister? That's the big unknown right now.
Yeah, I guess it is. You just kind of wonder, the number of doctors who leave or are planning on leaving, that number goes up and up and up. It was 300 a week ago. Now I understand it's up over 600. So at some point, someone's going to have to blink here, no?
Yes, somebody's got to blink. At least they need to be back at the table, at least negotiating and making sure they can agree on something. And it's difficult because they're fighting at the same time general doctors and specialist doctors. Normally, you kind of divide to conquer, and you don't go after both those very strong organizations at the same time.
So speaking of, bad news for the provincial government, the STM strike, so the maintenance strike is still on. Then, of course, we risk this weekend, if there is no deal reached, that the drivers go on strike, which would mean no service, bus or metro, right through the weekend, Saturday and Sunday. So Jean Boulet, the labor minister, kind of gave the impression now that even though this new law doesn't come into effect or wouldn't until November 30th, he wants to see it moved up. Of course, he needs the opposition to be on board. We know Quebec Solidaire has already said no. So what happens next year? What can he do?
They can make a special law exactly the same way they did for the doctors. I don't understand why they're not doing it. I don't understand why they're still trying to think that they can convince Quebec Solidaire. Quebec Solidaire already voted against this bill, and they don't want to get on board. It's quite interesting because the Liberals are now on board. Even the PQ is on board to kind of fast-track this bill and this law to break the strike. But Quebec Solidaire doesn't want to move. But the problem right now is that I don't understand the position of Quebec Solidaire because, yes, normally you want to protect workers. You want to also protect their right to have a strike. But the reality is that low-income people are the ones who are suffering right now because they cannot afford a taxi or, for example, other means of transportation. So low-income people are the ones that are being hurt. Especially, for example, today, it's a question of security. We cannot have a subway not functioning when we have like this, a snowstorm, and that people have difficulties moving around the city. It's also a security issue. So I do understand the government wanting to move forward. And don't forget, at the federal level, it happened, for example, for ports. It happens also when it comes to railway, and it happens to Air Canada. At a certain point, it's essential services that, especially on an island, which is Montreal is an island, you need urban transit.
Yeah, look, at the end of the day, if they're going to fast track this, right, and force a vote, it only would take, a day or two to get it done?
Yeah, a night. They can do it in a night exactly the same way they did for Bill number 2,
right,
if they want to. I think they're going to put some pressure, try to corner Quebec Solidaire, but if Quebec Solidaire doesn't move, they can force a vote.
Okay. Last thing I would ask with respect to what's happening here, you have our mayor. I find this really interesting, right? We forget that, Soraya Martinez-Frada is officially not really the mayor for another couple of days, I think, right? She kind of jumped into this STM debate from the get-go, I think the first day, saying, I'm going to get involved here. I'm curious what you make of this because she really doesn't have the power to get anything done.
Yeah, but at the same time, she says she would get involved, but putting a deadline of November 15th. So she already said, okay, have another 10 days of strike instead of asking for to put pressure and bringing everybody at the table right away. So I think it was weird to basically say, oh, let's have another 10 days of strike instead of saying, look, this is very important. This is an essential services. So I do believe that normally she could have called the federal government, the provincial government to intervene quicker and faster. And I do believe that the Quebec government should have said that they're going to get involved. I think it's too little too late when it comes to Minister Boulay only today saying that he's going to put forward a bill tomorrow.
All right, we'll leave it at that. Rudy, thank you so much.
The newest tracks. Let's go. New music. And the next big thing.
Always on the new music first.
Your first place to hear it all.
'Cause you gon' like it, love it, wanna play it twice. Playing now.
iHeart New Music. Your digital station for brand new drops, fresh finds, and tomorrow's bangers.
I think we need something new.
Discover iHeart New Music. Always fresh, always first. Stream now on the free iHeartRadio app.